Hi, today I'm going to be talking to you about the research behind fat and formulating a low carb diet. My name's Kelly Hodges. I'm an accredited practicing dietitian and almost a diabetes educator. By the end of this year, I will be. And I'm based on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. So today I'm going to be talking to you about the research behind dietary fat and also formulating a low carb diet. So I have broken it up into two parts just so that it's nice and easy to present the information so that you can take it on board. So in the first part, we're going to touch on the history of fat and the benefits of fat. That's a huge topic, the benefits of fat. We're going to have a look at the research behind the low carb, high fat lifestyle. So just what the research is finding, a couple of myths, some common myths that I come across in clinic, and then have a talk about some dietary fat recommendations that you can start putting into place now. And then when we talk about formulating a low carb diet, we're going to have a look at the 4 steps to low carb success, and then work our way through turning a standard Western meal into a low carb meal, just to give you some, I guess, real life examples about what you can be doing. Let's get into it. First of all, guys, in order to understand anything, we just need to clarify what is fat. So dietary fat is the fat that we consume in our diet. That's what I'm going to be talking to you about today. And lots of people get dietary fat and body fat confused. Lots of people think when I say fat, I'm talking about the fat on our body. So I'm not. So body fat is the fat stored in our body. Dietary fat, which I'm talking about today, is actually just dietary sources of fat that we're consuming. So they're things like avocado or butter, olive oil, and coconut as some examples. Okay, let's get into the history of fat. So some of you may know this gentleman. This is Dr. Ansel Keys. Now, Dr. Ansel Keys, he was definitely a very pivotal part of nutrition history and how and what we all believe today. And so Dr. Ansel Keys, he researched factors involved in heart degeneration. And so he had a look at, he did essentially the 7 countries study. And so the 7 countries study was him going across to all these different countries and collecting nutrition data to identify what is it that causes heart disease, or what is it that causes this ill effect. And what he found after studying these 7 countries is that it was dietary fat. And so he made this claim that fat makes you fat. And so when he made this claim that fat makes you fat, it started this whole big low fat, no fat diet. And because he was so well known and he was working for the president, was the one who instigated this research after he had a heart attack. But because he was so well known and so loved by the population, when he said fat makes you fat, everyone instantaneously went on a low fat, no fat diet. And this started the whole big, I don't even know what to call it, but the whole big bandwagon of low fat, no fat. All the big companies, they just started stripping the fat out of their products and labeling them no fat or reduced fat or light or whatever it might be. And all the Americans, they were purchasing these products because fat makes you fat gives you heart disease, and therefore people were getting quite concerned. However, 5 decades later, that's a long time, 50 years later, I found that the 7 country study, in fact, had 22 countries. And so when you have a look at the data from the 22 countries, it's very, very difficult to find a correlation between fat consumption, so your dietary fat, and weight gain or heart disease. And so that in itself is absolutely mind-blowing. Because it was a 7 country study, the data that he presented was from the 7 countries, and when you look at that data, it's definitely the more fat you eat, the more weight you put on, or the higher your risk of heart disease. But when you actually plot all 22 countries, so all the data that he had actually gathered, you can see it's very difficult to actually make any sort of correlation. And furthermore, according to the US Department of Agriculture, 3 decades following the low-fat, no-fat guidelines, and with Americans dropping fat intake by about 4%, it actually landed with the populations with waistlines doubled in size. And so everyone following this advice of a low-fat, no-fat, reduce your fat, choose a lean option sort of approach, they were actually just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. At the same time, this is Dr. John Yudkin, and he was researching carbohydrate metabolism. Now, carbohydrates are broken down into sugar, so he was having a look at the effects of sugar. And he published his book called Sweet and Deadly, but unfortunately it gained sustained attack as it was promoting sugar that was killing the people and not fat, as Dr. Keyes had suggested. And it almost went, from what I can identify, obviously I wasn't around at this time, but it looks like it almost went into a bit of a popularity war. And because Dr. Ansel Keys was a lot more well known, he was the one who essentially won. And so we continued with the low-fat bandwagon. And this was kind of the history or the research about carbohydrates was pushed to the side. And Dr. Yudkin, he was forced to retire in 1971. And so just that history alone, going way back there, having a look at where our guidelines actually kind of originated from, it's kind of mind-blowing to know that the main research that we've based everything on is not really on sound evidence. Furthermore, guys, we just need to understand what are the benefits of fat. And so there's so many benefits of fat, and we're going to work our way through these. So first of all, fat increases satiety. So satiety is fullness. When you're consuming fat in your diet and you're actually having fat like as part of your everyday food, it increases your fullness. It therefore makes it very, very hard to overeat your calories because you're feeling full. And so lots of people go, oh no, but fat has more calories than protein or than carbs or whatever it might be. Yes, it may do, but it also increases that satiation. And so you're going to struggle to overeat. And so that in itself is awesome. The other real great benefit of increased satiation is when people come into the clinic and they're like, oh, I've tried every diet and make me eat like a rabbit and whatever it might be. And they're always feeling hungry on their previous approaches. And so when I'm able to say to them, okay, guys, let's just put the fat in there, eat the fat, enjoy the fat, they feel full. And I've had many, many comments where the people have said, oh my gosh, for the first time in years. One lady was the first time in my adult life, and she was about 50. The first time in my adult life, I'm feeling full. That is huge. That's amazing. Could you imagine just constantly feeling hungry? Or better yet, can you just imagine feeling satisfied? How nice is that? Guys, it helps to absorb fat-soluble vitamins. So vitamins A, D, E, and K, they're classed as fat-soluble. So that means you need fat in the diet in order to absorb it. Vitamin D, just to give you an example, is vitamin D is one where you need the sun for absorption. So you get vitamin D from the sun. And if you have a look at the Australian Bureau of Statistics, it shows that about just shy of 25% of Australians are vitamin D deficient. Now, we live in a beautiful sunny country for the most part. So this could be one of two things. It could be we're that good at slip, slop, slapping that we're not getting the sun that we are requiring. Or it could be that, yes, we're getting the sun, but we're not actually getting the fat into our diets because we're following such a low-fat diet in order to actually utilize the vitamin D that we're getting. And so we're needing the fat in our bodies to absorb these fat-soluble vitamins. Dietary fat provides your body with essential fatty acids. Now, these fats, they're called essential because your body can't make it itself. You require it from the diet. And so you've got essential fatty acids, you've got essential protein, so essential amino acids. There's no essential carbohydrates, and that's just something that's quite interesting. Moving on, it controls inflammation. So something like rheumatoid arthritis, it does help to control that inflammation. That, of course, is dependent on the type of fat that you're consuming. Management of depression is a massive, massive, massive one. So for depression, such a high number of people are on antidepressants or have some sort of mental condition that they may be controlling through antidepressants. And what the research actually shows is that 1 in 3 people don't actually respond to antidepressants. So of everyone who needs it, 1 in 3 people aren't actually responding to antidepressants. And then so the 2 and 3 people that are responding, they're then having to struggle with all the side effects of antidepressants. And as their body becomes used to it, they may need higher levels of antidepressants, or it may cause these side effects where they need other medications to help control other bits and pieces of their life. And so it's kind of one thing leads to another. When you've got enough omega-3 specifically, so EPA, DHA, they're the types of oils, when you've got those in your diet, you're a lot less likely to experience depression. And so what they've found previously is that countries with higher levels of EPA, DHA are far less likely to have depression. And when I first started as a dietitian, I was in a lovely integrative clinic and we saw a lot of people who had depression. And the first thing that we would do, anyone who had depression, let's say they're on antidepressants, was we would, and when I say we, under the care of the doctor would do all the prescribing, and I would do the food side, cheering everybody on. And so the doctor would just prescribe really high therapeutic levels of EPA, DHA oil to these individuals who are on antidepressants, and over time they're able to keep their oils up but then get rid of their antidepressants and therefore get rid of their side effects. People who were kind of leaning, they had depression but they weren't yet on antidepressants, but they're kind of asking about them, wanting something to help control their state. Again, this integrative doctor would just push the levels of EPA, DHA up, and with that would help to control episodes of depression or depression as itself. And so management of depression is a massive, massive one, especially in this day and age where it is so prevalent in our society. Of course, always work with your healthcare team. Please don't just listen to what you hear on a presentation, even like this. You always need the care of your team so that they've got your individual requirements in hand. Brain development and nerve function. So your brain when you're born is about 70% fat. It drops down to about 60% fat. And so your brain is more than half of it is fat. You need fat in your diet to essentially feed your brain, and then also your nerve function. Your nervous system relies on fats to be able to talk back to your brain, from your brain to your nervous system. And so for mental clarity, for example, brain development, you're needing fat in your diet. That's really, really important. Healthy glowing skin and strong nails, that's a fun bonus for us. And there's more. Improves efficiency and effectiveness of blood clotting. That's due to the vitamin K, fat-soluble vitamin that we spoke about before. It provides energy for our body, so protein, carbohydrate, fat. There are 3 macronutrients. They all provide energy for our body. We know that. And so that's just really cool. So it affects cholesterol levels, and it can either increase or decrease the risk of cardiovascular disease. Now, the reason why I say increase or decrease the risk is because it depends on the type of fat you're eating. If you're having fats that are more your natural sorts of fats and anti-inflammatory fats, it's going to decrease the risk of cardiovascular disease. If you're having fats which are man-made fats and hydrogenated fats, it's actually going to increase the risk of cardiovascular disease. And we'll get into the different types of fats shortly. And then essential fatty acids support the immune system. So if you're becoming unwell, you may be unwell for less time, so just a quicker recovery, and then also you may have less frequent illnesses as well. So it definitely supports the immune system. And my favorite, enhances the taste of food. It tastes so, so good. And this is a really big one in clinic again, because people, they come to you and they've tried all these different things and they're sick of dieting, they're sick of eating cabbage or eating leaves or whatever it may be. And when you're able to say to them, please, like, put some avocado on your salad or sprinkle some oil over there, or um, have the fat on your steak or enjoy the chicken skin, when you're able to say that and they enjoy their food, it makes it so much more sustainable. So they're actually loving their food, so that they're going to continue on with it longer term. So that's really, really cool. So the current research findings, so everything listed on here obviously has research to back it. If anyone wants to research, you're welcome to get in touch with me. So a diet higher in fat and lower in carbohydrates. This is in comparison to the standard Western diet, which is higher in carbs and lower in fat. So essentially a low carb, high fat diet decreases coronary disease risk. So it's got favorable effects on lipids. So it decreases, so anyone who's reading your cholesterol results, there's HDL, LDL, and triglycerides. So first of all, it decreases triglyceride levels. Triglycerides, your really inflammatory cholesterol in your bloodstream. So what you find is when you decrease your carbs and increase all of your natural dietary fats, it decreases triglycerides, which is really beneficial. It increases your HDL cholesterol. HDL is your really, really good anti-inflammatory cholesterol. And so we want that one to be high. And this sort of approach helps to increase it. It decreases total LDL, and LDL is a bit on the fence. I'm not even going to go into that today. But what we find is that it increases the particle size of LDL cholesterol. So LDL cholesterol, you can have the really small particles, and that is quite detrimental to your health, and it's been found to kind of increase that risk of cardiovascular disease. But as soon as you're able to increase the size of the LDL particles, it's actually then said to not be of concern. So if you've got elevated LDL, but they're of a bigger particle size, then it's generally of no concern. It's just when you've got elevated LDL of small particle sizes. But like I say, that's a topic for another day, or for a doctor to present to you, not for a dietitian. It has shown a decrease in blood pressure. So if you've got elevated blood pressure, it can help to bring that down. It definitely assists in the management and possible reversal of diabetes that's due to greater insulin sensitivity. So with diabetes, you can, with this sort of approach, what they found is that you can actually reverse pre-diabetes, and you can put type 2 diabetes into remission. So you can get off oral medications, and you can get off insulin if you're taking that as well. When it comes to type 1 diabetes, you can manage diabetes, you can manage the type 1 diabetes, but because you're actually not producing the insulin, you're not able to reverse it. And so you do still have type 1 diabetes, but we can tightly control it so that you're not fluctuating up and down, up and down, up and down. Moving on, achieves greater weight loss. Awesome. How cool is that? And it's more sustainable longer term. I've definitely found that in my own clinic, within myself, and then of the people that I've spoken to over the years as well. It's more palatable. That's a massive one. Everyone loves it. I haven't actually come across many who don't enjoy it. Lots of people come in and they're like, oh, I don't want to eat the animal fat because I've been brought up not to, and I find it gross or revolting or whatever it is. That's fine. Don't eat it, but have your other types of fat. And you do find that people really, really enjoy this way of eating a lot more. And then also it can be nutritionally adequate. So pretty much it is nutritionally adequate, but I have to say can be, because someone may follow this sort of approach, but they may not actually have a nice varied diet like you're meant to have, and so therefore they may not make it nutritionally adequate. But that's like any diet. If you're following the standard Western guidelines, for example, that also may not be nutritionally adequate unless you're doing it all and following all the veggie recommendations and meat recommendations and everything to ensure that you're getting a good nutrient profile variation there. So that's the current research. That's what we're finding, and that's Really cool. Are all fats created equally? And so, guys, we got different types of fats. We got the saturated fats, which come from your animal products, and also coconut fats. Can't forget them, they're quite popular these days. Saturated fats increase the LDL cholesterol, which, as I said before, we're sitting on the fence with that. We've got the unsaturated fats. They're from your plant and your marine sources. They're very anti-inflammatory. So they're amazing, really, really beneficial for reducing cardiovascular disease risk. And then you've got your trans and hydrogenated fats, which are man-made, and you want to avoid them as much as you can. So just to show you what I'm meaning here. So we got saturated at the top left. That's all of your animal fats, and it's the fat that comes with the meat. And so you can see all of your animal sources there, the chicken skin. Like I said before, it is also coconut in there as well, but it's mostly your animal products. You've then, bottom left, you've got your unsaturated fat. So that's avocado, salmon, oils, so like olive oil or flaxseed oil, then nuts and seeds as well. So these are said to be cardioprotective, so anti-inflammatory, and they're going to be quite beneficial for your health. And these are the fats that I guess the diet should be based around. These are the ones that are really, really protective and will do you a lot of good. And then on the right hand side, they're your trans or hydrogenated fats, and so otherwise man-made fats. And so they're processed. And so things that you find in commercial products, so things like commercial bickies or commercial cakes, something like margarine, deep fried foods, they are your vegetable oils or canola oils. It's, excuse me, it's all of your processed foods where you kind of know when you're eating it, this is a bit of a treat. And so those are the ones that actually increase inflammation in your body and increase your risk of heart disease. The other thing actually to note with them is all of these sorts of fats, they generally come packaged with carbohydrates as well. And so you've got these inflammatory fats packaged with carbs, and together that combination is very palatable, hence why the processing foods do that. The companies make their foods to be like that. They're very palatable, so you're wanting more and more, but then also that combination of a huge amount of carbohydrates and the inflammatory fats does all sorts in your body, leads to weight gain as one of the major things, increases inflammation. So we're going to just quickly go over some fat recommendations. And so these recommendations are mostly my own recommendations that I've formulated over the years that I've been working this way. So some of them do definitely come from government sources like the fish recommendation. And so all recommendations, obviously, they're written for a wide group. They're not for you individually, so please seek individual care if you've got specific requirements, or come and have a chat to me. I'd love to have a chat to you, and we can go over kind of where you're at, what foods you're currently eating, what's your medical history, allergies, intolerances, all of that, and then we're able to formulate plans for you, but this is just a nice broad range. So first of all, the first fat recommendation is fish, aiming for 2 to 3 serves of fish per week. So one serve equals 120 to 150 grams. And things like salmon and sardines, they're really high in these omega-3s that we're after. So omega-3 is a type of fat, can go further, it's EPA, DHA, but don't need to get too confusing. So salmon and sardines, nice and oily, they're going to really bump up those healthy levels of fat. Shellfish is another really good option. I tend to encourage people to limit their intake of tuna, flake, or other large fish, and that's due to mercury. So it's got nothing to do with fat, nothing to do with carbohydrates, it's to do with mercury. And so again, that's my own recommendation, which I've seen in practice. And so you can take it or leave it. Now, guys, what happens if you don't like fish? Lots of people don't enjoy fish, and that's fine. If you don't enjoy fish, enjoy walnuts or flaxseed oil or linseed. So flaxseed oil is just made from linseeds. That's the same thing, just by the way. So linseeds, flaxseed oil, or walnut. So if you're wanting to leave the fish, for the walnuts, aiming for a small little handful most days. For the flaxseed oil, maybe aiming for about just shy of a tablespoon most days. To give you an example, recommendations for omega-3s, which is this type with the fish, is about 250 milligrams per day. In one serve, and that's American recommendations. Australia is lower, but I'm going with American because they're really beneficial. So a higher recommendation is good. And so for the fish, one serve of fish for salmon, for example, gives you about 4,000 milligrams. So it gives you a huge amount. Something like walnuts. So if you've got a good little handful, so let's say maybe you've got about 20 of the halves of the walnuts in your hand over there, that would give you, I think it's around about 2,000 milligrams. And then the flaxseed oil, 1 tablespoon, is about 7,000. And so using these alternatives really, really bumps it up. So even though it's a dietary food, I think lots of people don't realize the potency of what the diet can do. The diet can absolutely heal your body, and the whole "let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food." It's very applicable because you can achieve a lot with your diet. The second recommendation is enjoy animal fat in its natural form. And so enjoy the animal fat as it comes with the meat. There's no need to buy the animal fat by itself. So if you're wanting to go out and buy a pork cracker, that's not what I'm encouraging. I'm encouraging you to eat the pork. You've got a piece of pork that big, eat the crackle that comes on top of it. If you don't like saturated fats, if you don't want the animal fat, don't eat it. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. Just make sure you're getting your fats from another source. That's no problem. And then always choose full fat dairy products instead of your light or your reduced fat options as well. Choose your cooking oils wisely, guys. So avoid sunflower oil, canola oil, vegetable oil. If you've got it in your house at home and you're sitting there at home right now, press pause, run out, grab it, pop it in the bin, and then come back. It's so inflammatory. It's actually, it's terrible stuff. So please just avoid that as much as you can. When it comes to high temperature cooking, using your animal products tend to be good just because they're very heat stable. So butter, lard, ghee. Coconut oil is another really good option. They've got very high smoke points. And when they've got high smoke points, it's not changing the biochemical structure of the oil. If it's olive oil, lots of people use olive oil. So, and it goes back and forth a lot, which is fine. One day we'll figure out exactly what we're meaning here. But pretty much with olive oil, you don't want it to go past its smoke point. And the smoke point is, let's say, when it's on your pan and it starts to smoke, that's it going past the smoke point. And what happens is when it's at the smoke point, it's changing the biochemical structure of the oil, and therefore it's becoming quite inflammatory. So it goes from being this lovely, really healthy, anti-inflammatory, cardioprotective oil. You heat it, you make it smoke, and it goes into an oil which is similar to sunflower or canola oil. And so as a general guide, guys, approximately 180 degrees, use olive oil if you're wanting to, but as soon as you get above that, just don't use that one at all. It's really great to sprinkle over veggies or a salad once they're already cooked. So roast up your veggies and then sprinkle with olive oil just before serving. Or you can do olive oil, or you could do macadamia oil, flaxseed oil. Flaxseed oil is lovely because it doesn't really have a flavor. And so putting the oil on afterwards to increase the fat intake in your diet is really good, and also to not destroy the biochemical structure of the oil. Next one, nuts and seeds. 1 to 2 tablespoons a day is really good. Variety is key. We're looking for a little handful here. We're wanting a good variety. There's no good nuts, no bad nuts. Just have a good variety. Choose raw options as much as you can. Flavor and roast them yourselves. And then avocados, we're aiming for 1 to 2 a week. and they're seasonal. So maybe have 1 to 2 a week when they're in season. When they're not in season, focus more on having more oils or more fish, or more of another type of fat. That's fine. But when they're in season, make use of them. They've got lovely, lovely, healthy fatty acid profiles in there. You can actually buy frozen chunks, which are great for something like a smoothie. So that is an option when they're not in season as well. So that there is the fat recommendations. Some common dietary fat myths. And so we're going to go over these quite quickly just because I am conscious of your time. And so the first one, all fats are bad and not needed in the diet. So the truth, only trans and hydrogenated fats are bad. Dietary fat is absolutely essential for optimal health. There's the essential fatty acids, meaning we need it from the diet. Fat makes you fat. It's actually very difficult to gain weight when you're consuming adequate fat in the diet. Fat increases satiation. Therefore, it's hard to overeat. And I'll often just say to people, just test it. Just have an experiment. Give yourself a few weeks or a month where you're reaching all of your fat recommendations, or hey, following a low carb, high fat diet, which I'll run you through in a second, and see how you go. If you feel great, stick to it. If you don't feel great, go back. And I haven't yet had anyone go back. Fat gives you heart disease. So that's a myth. Only excessive consumption of trans fat and hydrogenated fats will increase the risk of your heart disease. Sugar is actually now more commonly linked to inflammatory states and heart disease risk. So sugar being carbohydrates, and then also, of course, the, like I said already, the trans fat and hydrogenated fats as well. Then myth number 4, reduced fat products are healthier. So when fat is removed from a product, sugar is often used to replace it. If you look at a nutrition panel, you'll find low-fat products generally contain more sugar than regular fat products. And so this results in less satiation because you don't have the fat there, less nutrition, you're not absorbing all of your vitamins that you're wanting to absorb, higher sugar levels for most parts, greater energy crash because when you've got sugar, your energy levels go up and then it crashes down. Minimal fat-soluble vitamin absorption, and a product no longer in its natural form. So choose not high-fat products, just regular fat products. Just choose products as they naturally occur. Okay, guys, moving on. How to formulate a low-carb diet. So I've broken this up into 4 easy little steps for you. Step 1 is fat. Step 2 is hydration and electrolytes. Step 3 is real food, and step 4 is carbohydrates. So I'm going to run you through that now. So step 1, fat. First of all, increase the fat in your diet so that you're reaching baseline recommendations. So refer to the guidelines that I've just gone over. So if you've forgotten them, go back, grab a screenshot of the guidelines, and just start working on reaching those basic guidelines for your fat to make sure that you're having enough fat in your diet. Do this for a few days, do this for up to a week. Do each of these steps maybe for about anywhere between 4 and 7 days. Step 2, hydration and electrolytes. That's so important that you're having enough of these. So hydration is I think quite often overlooked because it's so simple, and lots of people are actually quite dehydrated, and it's causing effects like cravings or low energy levels, or all sorts of other things. And so ensure you're adequately hydrated on a daily basis. The other reason is when you change over to a more low carb approach, you will have some fluid losses, so you're needing to replace them. And when you've got those fluid losses, it's taking the electrolytes out with it as well. And so you need your hydration and your electrolytes before you move on to reducing your carbohydrates. So aiming for about 1.5 to 2 liters a day. More if you're exercising. Again, this is for everyone. So more if you're exercising. You can work it out yourself. So you're needing about 30 to 35 mils of water per kilo of body weight. And again, more if you're exercising. More if it's warmer, less if it's cooler, but that's a nice ballpark figure for you. Non-caffeinated water-based beverages count, so things like your herbal teas, they absolutely count to your water count, or something like a soup, that counts as well. But things like coffee, soft drink, protein smoothies, milk, they don't count. So they're not included in your water count. Excuse me. And then ensure adequate use of electrolytes. So especially if you're going to be making some quite significant changes in order to achieve a low carb, high fat diet. So just quickly jumping down to the bold at the bottom, inadequate hydration and electrolyte intake can result in fatigue, weakness, headaches, difficulty concentrating, muscle cramps, and in some instances, heart palpitations. And so we're obviously, and that's quite rare, but we're obviously wanting to make sure that you're well hydrated and you've got electrolytes in you so that you don't experience those things. If you are experiencing those things as you're making these changes, then it's just a sign that you need to revisit the step and increase your hydration, and maybe look at how you can increase your electrolytes as well. Maybe have a chat to a dietitian who is on board with this sort of approach. And so ensure adequate use of electrolytes on a regular basis. So salt your foods. You can consider light salt. Now, light salt, it's available Coles, Woolies, but it's 50% sodium, 50% potassium. And so it's actually got 2 of your electrolytes in there already. And so that's a good option, and just use that on your meals. And also the other thing is you can have a look at just bumping up your intake of your leafy greens, avocado, oily fish, and seeds. They're really, really great nutrition houses for electrolytes, and so making use of that. So bump up your intake of leafy green veggies by 1 serve a day, for example. Avocado, maybe aim to have that, a small portion every day. Maybe oily fish, you're going to focus on having a good solid amount of that each week, and you're going to reach those requirements. Or seeds, you're going to start sprinkling them into what you're eating, or into a nut and trail mix. So just make sure that you've got those electrolytes going into you. Otherwise, you may suffer these consequences and you may not want to continue on, which would be a real shame. You'd miss out. Step 3, change over to real food. So change your diet to real food wherever possible. So real food is food that grew on the land, it swam in the ocean or the lakes or wherever, it walked or it flew. If it didn't do those things, then it's probably, for most cases, not real food. So base your diet around fresh veggies, protein, nuts and seeds, and also some fruit. So choose better alternatives for your current processed food. So we're going to run through some options here. So swap this for that. So lasagna, we could swap for eggplant slices. Spaghetti, we could swap for zoodles. Zoodles is just like zucchini, or what's it? Is it aubergine? No, courgette. One of those funny words for those who are listening overseas. And so zoodles is zucchini, where you just spiralize it. So you can buy a spiralizer where it's like a pencil sharpener and it comes out as spaghetti at the bottom, or you can get the fancy ones as well. So spaghetti, instead of like pasta type spaghetti, grab a zucchini and use that as an alternative. You're increasing your veggies, you're significantly decreasing carbs as well. Rice, whether it's white rice or brown rice, change it over to cauliflower rice or try broccoli rice. You can buy those pre-packaged from Coles or Woolies in the frozen section or in the fresh section. So try it out before you make your own. Really, really tasty. Instead of using breadcrumbs, you could have a look at using almond meal or macadamia meal, and you can just make that yourself. Grab some almonds, pop it into a blitzer, and then you've got your almond meal. Instead of soft drink, you can use a iced herbal tea. So just grab some herbal tea from your tea section, make the tea as normal, pop it into the fridge, maybe put some nice fresh fruit in there, just as a bit of extra flavor. Instead of rolls or buns to make your burgers, you could use field mushrooms. They're delicious. Instead of a salad dressing, a commercial salad dressing, which if you have a look at the back, it's generally got quite a bit of vegetable oil or sunflower oil, sugars in there, all sorts of funny ingredients, stabilizers. Just use an infused olive oil, so like a lemon infused olive oil over your salad. And then something like wraps, change it over to lettuce. So you're just starting to make all of these little transitions where you're actually eating real food. And even by doing that, you're going to feel so much better. Step 4 is carbohydrates. So your main carbohydrate sources are things like your bread and your bread products, pasta, rice, cereals, starchy veggies, so things like potatoes, corn and peas, and then fruit. And so they're your major sources of carbohydrates, and these are the ones that we're wanting to reduce in the diet so that we're not focusing on a lot of sugar in the diet. We're rather focusing on high nutrient density foods. And so by changing over to a real food approach, you've already significantly reduced your carbohydrate load. If you want, you can grab a phone app and actually just track your food for a few days, making sure that your carbs are between 50 to 130 grams a day. And hey, before you start, you may even want to do this just to see how you're progressing and how you're changing. I generally advocate in my clinic for anywhere between kind of 80 to 120 grams as a nice healthy sort of carbohydrate figure. And so just starting to reduce the carbohydrates down in your diet. You don't have to get rid of them. Just reducing it down. Just remember, any change you're making, you want it to be sustainable. So don't make changes that you hate. Really enjoy the changes you're making just to ensure that they are sustainable. If you are having carbs, so let's say you are wanting a piece of bread, you are wanting some rice, whatever it might be, make sure it makes up no more than a quarter of your meal. The other 3/4 of your plate, half of it should be veggies, and the remaining quarter should be protein, like a protein source. And so have your carbs if you're really, really wanting your carbs. Most people find you don't actually need a section of your plate dedicated to carbohydrates, so you don't need the potato or the pasta or the bread or whatever it is. But if you are wanting it, that's fine, that's no problem. Just make sure it's no more than a quarter of your meal. And also just remember that carbs aren't essential for optimal health. There's no essential carbohydrate that your body is requiring. And you're always going to have some carbs in your diet, even with the low carb diet, because carbs are found everywhere. And we're not avoiding carbs, we're just limiting them. You will feel a lot better for it. So just to give you an example, all of these plates on here show 20 grams of carbohydrates. And so you can see what 20 grams of carbohydrates from a piece of bread or from a potato looks like versus 20 grams of carbohydrates from some salad or some berries or nuts. And you can just see which ones are likely to give you more nutrients, which ones more fiber to fill you up for longer, which ones will even just last longer if you're just wanting to eat for longer just for the sake of eating. And so this here is 50 grams of carbohydrate. And so again, it's just that nice little comparison just so that you can see what carbohydrates actually look like and what you can be eating, because people go, oh, I'll be so hungry if I don't have my potatoes. And you kind of just want to be like, well, I mean, you eat that bowl of nuts and tell me if you're hungry. If you're hungry, then let's have a look at some other options, but most likely you're not going to be that hungry. Okay, let's run through a quick meal plan example, guys. So we're going to show you a Western meal plan and we're going to change it to a low carb meal, just so that you can see how easy this actually is. So this example on the screen is standard Western. This is a basic person that may come into the clinic and say, hey, I'd like to make some changes to my nutrition. Can you please help me? And so we're going to run through it step by step with you and just go through what we could possibly change it to. Some of these may be good options for you, some of them may not be, and that's fine. This is just one example. And so for brekkie, the standard Western brekkie, the example that was shown, it's eggs on toast, maybe a squirt of tomato sauce, an apple on the side, and maybe some orange juice to have a bit of a drink of. A low carb alternative, just to get the juices flowing, is eggs on a bed of spinach as opposed to on the toast. Instead of the tomato sauce, you're using extra virgin olive oil and you're sprinkling that on top of there. So now you've got lot of fat, and you've got a huge bed of spinach, so you've got lots of fiber, lots of nutrients going into you. Instead of an apple, you're going to actually put some avocado into that little mix that you're going to be eating. And then instead of orange juice, you could have something like a herbal tea or a coffee. All of that there is much, much higher in nutrients and much, much lower in carbohydrates and higher in fats. It's going to fill you up, keep you fuller for longer, provide you with the energy that you require, decrease energy slumps, increase mental cognition, all the rest of it. I'm not going to go into all of them again. Go back to the benefits of fat. Morning tea, the example showed a low-fat strawberry yogurt with a banana. So that you're wanting to stick to something similar, have a little bit of full-fat Greek yogurt. So don't have the flavored stuff. Have a Greek yogurt. By all means, add some berries to it yourself. So instead of having a super high carbohydrate fruit, you could have something like berries, which is, you can therefore eat a lot more of that, and then you'll feel a lot fuller. And so full-fat Greek yogurt with berries. For lunch, it was a chicken salad sandwich. I don't know whether that was white bread or wholemeal bread, but it doesn't matter. So chicken and salad sandwich, and maybe afterwards they've got about half a cup of Shapes biscuits just to have a quick snack on. And so a good option could just be the chicken and salad without the sandwich part, just the chicken and salad, more chicken, more salad. And then the sprinkle of the extra virgin olive oil on that again. And then maybe instead of the biscuit, something like crispy halloumi slices or something else. But just, you can see how easy it is to make the changes but still stick to kind of what you're having already. It's just making minor changes here and there. A small chocolate bar. And this example here, the small chocolate bar, is most people following a Western diet come about 2 or 3 p.m. in the afternoon. They're needing a pick-me-up. They're tired and they're waiting for home time, and they're waiting to get home and either sit down or have some chocolate to give them energy to make dinner and get the kids ready for bed or whatever it is. When you're following a diet which is less in carbs and more in fat, you actually find most people won't be having morning tea, afternoon tea, because your energy levels are stable and also you're not hungry. But let's say this person is hungry, they may want some roasted macadamias. They generally won't have the cravings or that desire for something sweet and a quick pick-me-up, so they can go for something like macadamias and they'd really, really enjoy that. For dinner, spaghetti bolognese for the standard option, and then spaghetti bolognese for the low carb option as well, but just instead of the spaghetti, using the zoodles. And I mean, as a first step, if you're just changing to real food, as we spoke about in step 3, you may be changing to like sweet potato noodles. So again, just using your spiralizer, sweet potato noodles, that's really lovely. And then as you're feeling comfortable, change it over to zoodles as another option again. And you may want to, over time, go half and half. And so whatever it might be, but have the same food, just change one tiny, tiny little element to make it more nutrient dense. And then for dessert, 2 scoops of ice cream for a standard Western diet. And for a low carb alternative, 2 scoops of ice cream. But for this one, you could have a look at just blending it up yourself. It takes honestly maybe a minute. So something like berries and coconut cream, and I've put the quantities in there just if you're wanting to use it. So pretty much put the frozen berries into the blender with the coconut cream, blend, 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 serve it up immediately and enjoy straight after dinner. If you want to put it away into the freezer, pop it into the freezer and then pull it out about 15-20 minutes before you want to eat it, just to give it time to defrost. But again, that's getting rid of all of the processed things. It's getting rid of your refined sugars. It's just giving you proper food. Guys, that's all from me. Please see your dietitian for assistance with any sort of dietary modifications, especially if you've got any sort of conditions going on. So if you've got diabetes or heart disease or high blood pressure, achy joints, whatever it might be, we're wanting to help you so that you can do it safely. More often than not, you're going to find amazing benefit with making dietary changes, but definitely do it with the assistance. Make lifestyle changes rather than going on a fad diet. So even if when you're going through these 4 steps that we discussed today, make sure that when you're going through them, you're choosing options that you're happy with, that you're able to maintain. Don't choose options where you're like, oh, I hate zucchini, I don't want zoodles. Then don't have zoodles, have something else. Choose a different option. And so just making sure that it's a lifestyle change, because if it's a fad diet, you're just going to go back, and we don't want you to go back. And then, guys, eat food in its most natural form. If you're doing that, you're going to struggle to go wrong, absolutely. Here are my contact details. If anyone does need any extra assistance or wants to chat about anything, I'm happy to help you. So please don't hesitate to get in touch. But thank you so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed putting this together, so I hope you found some value for it. Thank you. Chat later.